want to take just a few minutes here in the remaining time that we have tonight. And I'm going to talk to you about how God brings good out of bad situations. How God displays that father heart of God in our lives when things don't go real well. There's a lot of crazy things going on in our world today. We've got economic issues, political issues, racial issues, health issues. We got all kinds of things going on. It seems like there's more crisis and more catastrophes going on right now, all at the same time than ever before. And maybe you're caught up in the middle of it. Maybe your job's been affected, or your finances been affected, or your health or family has been affected. This is part of life. I remember 1 week after Hurricane Harvey hit our coast down here on the Gulf Coast, there was a gas shortage here in Texas, and I was at the gas station getting gasoline, and I was standing there pumping gas into my car when a car pulled up behind, and they ran out of gas as they turned into the parking lot, and they needed some help pushing their car up. And here's what I saw. The person driving the car was Hispanic, and the two people that ran to catch that car and keep it from rolling back into the street and push them up to the gas station was myself, a Caucasian, and the other person was an African American. And this was when I saw, in the middle of all the chaos and all the confusion, I saw my America. This is when I saw my America. Because there wasn't one of us, we didn't care what our skin color looked like. We didn't care how much money the other one made. We didn't care the political differences of one another. We just saw somebody in need. And we, as Americans, we just ran to the need. Now, this is what I believe God has placed us as a church here on this planet for, to run to the need. But we let all the other things get in the way and prevent us from being the church. John 15:13 says, greater love has no one than this, than to lay down one's life for his friends. See, the beautiful thing about how God brings bad out of good is that he wants to bless us when things are going crazy. He wants to bless you when you're broken. In fact, he leans in. You'll find his greatest blessings when you're going through the most difficult times of your life. In Ecclesiastes 3:1-4, it says there's a time for everything, a season for every activity under heaven, a time to weep, a time to laugh, a time to mourn, a time to dance. In other words, the Bible teaches us about a world of opposites, where you've got the good and you've got the bad. You've got the weeping and you've got the celebrating. It's all part of life. Sometimes it's a time for weeping. Sometimes it's a time for mourning. Sometimes a time for grieving. And processing all of that is all part of life. It's all part of when we're processing the emotion of difficulties. We're processing the mental challenge of difficulties. We're processing the physical adjustment of processes. It's all part of it. There's no growth in your life. Look at this quote. There's no growth in your life without change. There's no change without loss. There's no loss without pain. And there's no pain without grief. Do you have that on the screen? Is that one of the next slides? No? Okay. When we're willing to grieve over our pain, when we're willing to process the grief of loss, the grief of difficulties, the grief of challenges, that's when God steps in and brings a comfort into our lives that you don't get any other time. So here's what I'm asking you to do. I'm going to do this kind of quickly here tonight because of time's sake. I'm going to ask you to make room for God to step in and provide you a comfort that maybe you haven't allowed him to provide you, because sometimes we haven't embraced the pain of difficulties. Right, here's what I think. I don't even know I can articulate this right. I feel like sometimes we're so busy trying to pray away all the bad stuff. We're casting all the demons out that we don't allow ourselves just to process the pain, allow God to step into our world and just bring the healing that we need. It's like we're living in this state of denial. that bad things can't happen to good people. Bad things can't happen. Difficulties can't happen to a child of God. And so we don't just stop and just process the pain, process the hurt, and allow God to step in and heal. But I want you to make room for him to do that tonight. Because there are ways that he steps in and he proves the Father heart of God. He proves himself when we are hurting. 6 ways real quick. Number 1, God draws you closer to himself when you grieve. When you're in pain, when you're hurting, he draws you closer to himself. Psalms 34:18 says, the Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves the crushed in spirit. He's just nearer to the brokenhearted. Think about it, just in the natural. Who gets the attention when somebody is hurt? It's the hurting, right? Everybody focuses their attention there. It's no different whenever you're hurting. God, your Father, he runs to you. He's there and he rushes in. He leans in whenever you're hurting. Here's the second way he ministers to us. God grieves right along with you. Did you know that God is an emotional God? He grieves. He laughs. He celebrates. He's sympathetic. He's a suffering God. He's not indifferent. He's not apathetic. He's not standing on the sideline. Whenever we're suffering, he's right in there suffering with us. Remember hearing the story of a 16-year-old girl, and she had experienced her first heartbreak, and she went home and locked herself in her bedroom and just sat in the dark on her bed, curled up, crying, not eating, wouldn't come out, didn't want to talk to anybody. This went on for several days, just staying in that room as much as she could, brokenhearted, thinking life would never be the same again. When one evening, finally, her father came in, sat down at the foot of the bed, just sat there. Didn't say anything, just sat there. Finally, when her sobs and her tears slowed down a little bit, he just said, you don't believe it now, but you're going to be okay. And your old dad loves you no matter what. And he sat there a moment longer and just kind of patted her. Then got up and left. And it was just in that moment when that father came in the middle of her pain, and just reminded her she's going to be okay. Dad loves her no matter what. It gave a little glimmer of hope, a little tiny glimmer of hope that somebody got it, somebody cared, somebody understood. And it was in that moment she was able to wipe those tears, dry them, and come out and start facing life again. It may seem a little trivial, but the fact is we do the same thing. We get broken, we get hurt, offended, let down. We curl up in our little ball and we cry and we have our little pity party. And that's when God comes in and he grieves right along with us. He just pats us and says, hey, everything's going to be okay. And gives us enough of a glimmer of hope that we can get up and we can get moving and we can do it again. In fact, good dads, they care when their daughters hurt, and a good God cares when his children hurt. He cares about every single one of us. In fact, here's how God faces evil and pain head on. And this is what's different. I shared this in a little way here a few weeks ago at another message. But some religions try to seek to explain away the evil of the world and the pain of the world, whether it's karma or it's blamed on solely on man's misguided actions, or it's chalked up to God's inattentiveness to his people. Other religions try to explain evil and pain and bad things away that way. You know what Christianity does? Here's the way Christ approaches the troubles that we face. Head on. Whenever the world tries to tell us that everyone in this world has the right to live a life that's easy and uncomfortable and no challenges and no pain and no difficulties, and you can pursue your dreams without complication whatsoever, and we start buying into that. You know what Jesus' worldview is a little bit different. Jesus' worldview says, in this world you're going to have trouble, but take heart. I've overcome the world. You're going to have trouble. You're going to have pain. There will be difficulties. There will be loss. There will be challenges. It's part of life. But Jesus says, it's okay. I've overcome this. And if you will endure, and if you'll hang on, and if you'll allow me to come in and grieve with you, we're going to get through this together. And you're going to be all right. Our hurts can become the very place where we meet God. There's a Canadian poet and musician, Leonard Cohen, that said this. He said, there's a crack in everything. That's how light gets in. You see, whenever you're broken, that's when God shines through. That's when we see Him the best. Sometimes we try to avoid brokenness. We try to avoid pain. It's what our culture is doing now to our children, to our young people. We don't want them to ever experience loss. We don't want anybody ever lose, so everybody wins. It's not the real world. In the real world, somebody wins and somebody loses, right? Somebody gets the job and somebody else goes home and has to keep looking in the wanted pages, the wanted ads. The fact is, life has challenges. But in those challenges, God shows up beautifully. Sometimes He shows up through the kindness of someone's words. Sometimes He shows up in a sense of peace that we could never create or sustain on our own. Sometimes He just gives us a little glimpse of beauty, of a well-timed word of encouragement, and reassures us that we're going to be okay. But the fact is, God grieves right along with you. Here's the third thing. Number 3, God gives you a church family for support. He never intended for you to do this Christian life by yourself. We're all in this thing together. He's put us here together. Romans 12:5 says, in Christ we who are many form one body, and each member belongs to all the others. Be devoted to each other like a loving family. Rejoice with those who rejoice and mourn with those who mourn. So look, you're either going through pain and you need some comfort yourself, or you're not going through pain and you should be giving comfort to someone else. It's as simple as that. Number 4, God helps you grow through your grief. Nobody really wants to hang this on their refrigerator. But the fact is, God grows you up. You grow when you're experiencing grief. And here's how He does that. First of all, in fact, C.S. Lewis said this: God uses pain to get our attention. He said, God whispers to us in our pleasure, but He shouts to us in our pain. Pain is God's megaphone. Have you ever thought that sometimes God just allows a little bit of pain in our life to get our attention? Because comfort hasn't worked. So He uses pain. The second way is He brings good out of bad. Romans 8:28, we know in all things, God works for the good of those who love Him. And then third, He prepares us for eternity. How does He do that? Well, look what 2 Corinthians 4 says. For our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory. Our light and momentary troubles. Remember, the stuff that we face here on this earth, it's just momentary. Everybody say momentary. It's not forever. It's just momentary. The light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. So we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen. Since what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal. That's how God brings good out of our bad. And then number 5, God gives you the hope of heaven. He just turns our attention to heaven. He uses the pain that is in our life to get our attention back on the fact that we're not here forever. This isn't all there is to it. Sometimes we live our lives like this is all there is. This isn't all there is. Just passing through this place. Sometimes we forget. We act like we're going to be here forever. We're not. Here's what the Bible tells us. In 2 Corinthians 4:17, no, that's not it. In 1 Thessalonians 4:13, it says, but we do not want you to be uninformed, brothers, about those who are asleep, that you may not grieve as others do, who have no hope. You see, we grieve differently. We process grief. We should process grief differently. We process it as those who have hope that what we're going through, it's temporary. And then here, number 6, God uses your pain to help others. And this is really where I want us to get today. Worship team, you guys come on back up here. God uses your pain to help others. Sometimes we are so focused on the inconvenience of our pain and what it's doing to us. And we're forgetting and neglecting to realize that God might be using the pain that you're experiencing to prepare you to help somebody else. Our pain is redemptive. God never wastes a pain. He never wastes a hurt. He never wastes a broken heart. He heals it. And what does he do? Then he prepares you and equips you to help somebody else who has a broken heart. He restores your life. For what reason? Just so you can be restored? No. So that now you can help somebody else find restoration. You experience salvation. Why? Just so you can be saved? No. So that now you can share salvation with someone else. He heals your body. Why? Just so you can be healed? No. So that now you can share that story with somebody else so they can be healed. You see, if the message, if the healing, if it stops with you, it stops living. Everything God does is living. It's alive. He's alive. And so everything he does in us is to be passed on to somebody else. Even what we learn in pain, even what we learn in difficulties, even what we learn in grief, even what we learn in brokenness, is so that now we can help somebody else. 2 Corinthians 1:4 says he comforts us in all our troubles so that we can comfort others. Why does he comfort us in all our troubles? So we can comfort others. When they're troubled, we'll be able to give them the same comfort God has given us. See, I believe this. I believe your greatest ministry opportunity will come out of your deepest hurt. Some of you are still cursing the hurt. You're still cursing the circumstance. You're still mad at the fact that you had trouble. And you haven't recognized the fact that maybe God is preparing you in this deepest hurt to now have your greatest ministry opportunity, to be able to help somebody else get through the same thing. Sometimes we think the world is impressed with how we handle prosperity. But the fact is, the world is not impressed with how we handle prosperity. The world is impressed with how we handle adversity. So how are you handling the adversity that's in your life? How are you handling the pain that's in your life? How are you handling the difficulties? Is it making you mad and bitter at God? Well, then you're not handling it right. Whenever you get to a place to where you can say, okay, God, teach me what you want to teach me. Comfort me in this trouble. Comfort me in this challenge. Comfort me in this. Rather than just being completely focused on how quickly God can get you out of it. I've said before, when is this fiery furnace that you're in going to end? When you don't care how long you're in there. With Shadrach and Meshach and Abednego, when did they come out? When it didn't matter where they were in there. Why? Because they didn't care. They're just walking around. Why? Because Jesus was with them. He's with them in the fire. He's with them on the mountaintop. You got to be content that Jesus is with you. You're okay. Even if it's in the fiery furnace. And as soon as you get okay, you're prepared to go somewhere else. You haven't learned the lesson yet until you've learned to be okay where you are. Philip Yancey, in his book, What's So Amazing About Grace, he told this story of a friend of his that was working in a down and out Chicago area ministry. And here's what his friend said. He said, a prostitute came to him in wretched straits, homeless, sick, unable to buy food for her 2-year-old daughter. Through sobs and tears, she told me that she had been renting out her daughter, 2 years old. Said she made more renting her daughter for an hour than she could make on her own in a night. Said she did it to support her drug habit. Said I could hardly bear hearing this sordid story. Had no idea what to say to this woman. And at last I asked her if she'd ever thought of going to the church for help. And he said, I'll never forget the pure, naive shock that crossed her face. Church, she cried. Why would I ever go there? I was already feeling terrible about myself. They just make me feel worse. And Yancey goes on and said, what struck him about his friend's story is that people like this prostitute in the days of Christ, they would actually flock to Christ. They would come to him. The lepers would come to him. The down and out would come to him. The worse a person felt about themselves, the more likely they saw Jesus as a refuge. Has the church lost that gift? Have we lost that gift? That we would be a place of refuge for the down and out? Have we created a place? Have we created an attitude? Have we created an atmosphere that the down and out would only feel worse about themselves if they came to the house of God? Do you see something wrong with that? There's something wrong with that if that's the case. And we have to make sure that we recognize that we are allowing our pain not to separate us from people who have pain, but allow our pain to equip us to better minister to people who are in pain. Rather than denying the fact that there's chaos and challenges and difficulties in our life, say, Lord, what are you teaching me in the middle of this pain? What are you teaching me in the middle of this storm? And how are you going to use the pain that I'm going through right now to help somebody else get through their pain? Because that's what God wants to do with us. He doesn't want your pain to be wasted. He doesn't want your hurt, the tears that you've cried, the moments you've spent alone, the nights that you stayed up all night. He doesn't want that to be wasted. Let him come in. Make room for him tonight to step into your life and redeem your pain. He buys it back from you. He takes your pain and he gives it purpose. So as we lay it down, earlier we laid down sin and we laid down hurts. Today, I want you to give him your pain. What is the most difficult thing you're going through right now? What's the most hurtful circumstance or situation in your life right now? What absolutely makes no sense in your life? I want you to entertain the thought that rather than praying, God, take this pain away from me, maybe just say, God, teach me what you want to teach me while I'm here, and equip me to help somebody else. If you'll make room for him to come in and do that, I promise you, he'll start making sense out of things that doesn't make any sense right now. He'll start giving meaning and purpose to what you're going through. And I promise you, that's a quicker way to get out of the fiery furnace. Do me a favor, stand to your feet. God's heart is happy when we're happy, but his heart is broken when we're broken. He feels your pain. He knows where you are. He knows what you're experiencing today. And he wants to come in through the cracks in your life, through the brokenness. And he wants to shine his light of love into your heart, into your life. So rather than praying tonight, Lord, fill the cracks of my life and mend those broken places, why don't you just ask him, Lord, come in. I'm making room for you to shine in through the cracks that are in my life and show me the purpose of my pain. Help me to be able to comfort others with the same comfort I'm receiving from you tonight. All over this room, as we begin to sing this song out, I'm going to invite you to come. If you're in the middle of one of those circumstances that just doesn't make sense, you're in the middle of pain that just seems unbearable. You're in the middle of walking through that fire. You're walking through the deep. You're walking through the challenges, and it hasn't seemed to make any sense. And you say, you know what? I'm just willing to give it all to God tonight and I'm making room for Him to come in and redeem my pain, give me a purpose for it. And I'm willing to allow the comfort He gives me. I'm willing to share it with somebody else. If that's you, I'm going to ask you to bring it to this altar. Let's lay it down. Let's give it to Him tonight. This is His. This is a moment for Him to bring the healing and comfort that you need in your life. Come on, these altars are open while we're singing it out.